Good morning, afternoon, or evening. It's your finest fellow, Darktide Dumpster Dave here, praising the Emperor. And today it is my absolute pleasure to finally reveal to you the new Psyker build. Yes, that Psyker build. If you've been playing Orc Damnation online, you might have been one of the few lucky players to have witnessed it firsthand. And if you've been frequenting any Darktide communities, you've certainly heard it mentioned before. As you know, there was the big class overhaul back in October, and since early November, clips have been circulating online of an absolutely broken Psyker build dominating every game it's been in. Now, this is not the Gum Gum build from late October. That one revolved around big staggers from the Flame Staff and brain-bursting bigger threats, very pedestrian measures reliant on allies and unable to cope with many of the run-ending wave combinations that you need to be able to handle in Auric. It was the best build of the time, but was very predictable and full of limitations that, while effective, left me giving it a final verdict of homosexual. This new build has been kept under wraps for weeks now until on November 14th when Fat Shark suddenly released the Traitor Curse Part 1 update at 5:24 AM Eastern Standard Time, introducing the Inspect feature, and some of the quickest members of my vigilant underpaid staff were able to catch snapshots of the build before it was purged from public accounts and kept strictly to private matches. Now, there were a couple of clever misdirections planted, like the all-starter nodes build that was promising but unsuccessful, but through tireless effort, me and my team have finally recreated the #1 Psyker build, and it is my absolute privilege to finally reveal it to my fellow Darktide gamers for the very first time. But before I can do that, I of course need to give a huge shout out to my sponsor for funding all of our research down here in the Darktide dungeons. That's right, it's Kellogg's. You probably know them for their delicious, nutritious breakfast cereals that, like I always says, aren't just for breakfast. But did you know that the Kellogg's award-winning game development branch is nearing completion of their very own serial MOBA Battle Royale Souls-like MMO? I got to play the beta this weekend, and while I can't release any footage due to the strict DNR they had me sign, I can tell you that before the servers crashed, I got my Count Dracula to level 5 and was able to give Captain Crunch himself diabetes. Toucan Sam had to cut his fucking foot off, and that's not the only big news. Through our partnership with Kellogg's, as my fans have jealously seen me eating on stream, I can now reveal that our very own Darktide themed breakfast cereal Nurgle Bis will be hitting North American shelves by the end of the fiscal year. It's nutritious, it's delicious, it's 4,500 calories per serving. Add this one to your grocery list if you want that extra edge to keep your resting heart rate above 180 beats per minute with our signature Gamer Juice blend inside each and every Nurgle bit. We're all looking forward to it. Big ups to Kellogg's, their peak, their fire, their cereal is bussin'. So let's break down the tree of this absolutely broken Psyker build. Dubbed the diaper build by many, we first branch out into a lot of early survival nodes. Toughness when both gaining and purging peril, toughness on critical hits and on warp attack kills to, as the name would suggest, keep you from shitting your pants while running this build. From there we move into the Assail Blitz keystone on the right side of the tree, and I already know some of you are raising your eyebrows over that, but as I always tell my girlfriend, for the love of God, let me finish. From there we hop down to the Prescience Aura for that critical hit chance and add both the dodging nodes and veer straight into the Telekine Shield ability. Now I'm sure a lot of you are confused at this point, but for fuck's sake let me get to the end of the goddamn tree. From there we slip down into the Disrupt Destiny keystone and jump over to nab the Warp Rider passive, and there we have it. 30 talent points locked in for the full diaper build. And now that you've seen it, I'm sure your first thought is, what the fuck is this? That's probably because you're a typical smelly Psyker player reliant on blitzes and staves and ogrins to get you through the hardest difficulties, painfully managing your perils so you can do half the DPS of a veteran except you're made of tissue paper. You silly bitch! So let me go through a quick tutorial of how to play this build, and I can guarantee you that by the end of this video you yourself will be strapping on a diaper build and never looking back until Fat Shark give it the Nerf hammer. Wow! So let me break down your approach. First, throw out your daggers haphazardly at the first group of heretics you see. No need to moderate yourself. Blow your load until you get over 90% peril, and then that's when you whip out the secret weapon of this build. That's right, it's the objectively best melee weapon in the game, finally able to shine, the Maccabean Mark IV dueling sword. Now, if you're a fucking idiot, you might be confused what's so good about this sword, so let me show you. Did you see that? Was it too fast? Let me show you again! This sword will absolutely annihilate every enemy in the game. Light attacks through trash mobs and power attack through anything else. It does so much damage that the only way Fat Shark have kept it in check is by limiting it to the Psyker, where it has been suicide to try and run it, but not anymore. Now that we've got our diapers strapped on, we can go into every fight and take down the toughest enemies like a hot dick thrusting through butter. Now, you might be wondering, if we're doing something as stupid as going a melee build on a Psyker, why in God's name have we not at least picked up the Scryer's Gaze ability instead of Telekeen's Shield? Well, I'll tell you why, dipshit. First, do you think this needs the extra damage? No, it's a monster. Second, do you think we need the toughness and protection of a bubble shield? The answer is yes, unless you're one of those nerds who play true solo, in which case you're not watching this video because you can win with anything, asshole. We require this bubble shield as a panic drop when we need a safe space from too many ranged attacks or need that massive toughness regen to top us up. It's also, of course, the #1 ability for running public games. Without a bubble, your first fight in Orc Damnation is going to go down about the same way. Your Zelda's going to see the horde and go, oh man, I better rush in and stem the tide as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, your veteran is going to go scrambling for cover and your Ogren is going to be going, tasty nurgle bits, give me volcanic shits. You drop that bubble, motherfucker, and everything changes. Your zealot still runs in, but after the first few times he goes down, he'll eventually realize that his team is behind him hanging out together in your shiny shield. Your veteran will be more than happy to just stand there plonking heads, and your Ogren will have all the protection he needs in his safe space to peacefully pass his nurgle bits. Your daggers will mow down hordes, your sword will kill anything, and especially decimate carapace, and your natural charisma will carry the rest. Throw your daggers to max peril and keep your toughness up, exploit that extra 20% damage and stab through everything to get that peril back to 0, and then boost it back up again by spamming out those daggers. You have achieved a full diaper. You are a god amongst men. You will do ungodly amounts of damage, fear absolutely nothing, and be the best support player in the game with your shield that maximizes team coherency even when hurting the cats that are public players. Did I mention that we dodge all range attacks for a second after every crit? Broken! As for Uncanny Strike, as long as you're stabbing a weak spot at least once every 3.5 seconds, you'll be keeping up massive amounts of rending that, with the new calculations for rending damage, will keep your metaphorical DPS baloney pony fully engorged. Your custard launcher will have never been so erect when wrapped in the cushy confines of this full diaper. Give yourself a couple of runs to get a handle on this absolute pork sword and you will become the best player in the world, and that's a Darkside Dumpster Dave big gay guarantee. Well, that's all for me, fellow gamers. In conclusion, I give this build the ultimate ranking of homosexual.